I've kept this story locked up tight for years, like a dusty old diary you're afraid to open. It's been festering inside me, and now at 78, I'm finally ready to let it out. I was born in 1947 in a creaky little farmhouse out in rural Montana. My dad, Henry, was the kind of guy everyone in town tipped their hat to. He ran a small general store, always with a cigar dangling from his lips and a cowboy hat perched on his head. Outside, he was all charm and respectability. But behind our front door, that's where the real story starts. Growing up, our house ran on one rule. Dad's word was gospel. My mum, bless her heart, kept her head down, nodding along to whatever he said. There were 6 of us kids, 4 boys and 2 girls. I was the baby of the family. My brothers, they got to run wild, school, sports, you name it, me and my sister Clara. We were stuck in the yard. Good girls don't go gallivanting, Dad would bark, his voice shutting down any backtalk. Our job was to learn how to keep house, cook, and get ready to be somebody's wife. School ended for me after 4th grade. Dad figured I knew enough to read a recipe and write a grocery list. From then on, it was all chores and kitchen work with Mum. That's why, when I met James at 17, it felt like a lifeline. James was 25, a truck driver who'd just rolled into town. He had this easy grin and a way of talking that could make you believe in fairy tales. We met at a church picnic where I was helping serve lemonade. He strolled up, looked me right in the eyes and said, "Bet this lemonade's as sweet as the girl pouring it." I blushed so hard I probably looked like a ripe strawberry, but something sparked in me, a little flutter of hope. James started popping by Dad's store, buying stuff he didn't need just to steal a glance at me. Dad caught on quick, but didn't mind when James asked to court me. Honestly, I think he was just glad to have one less kid to feed. Our courtship was short and supervised, Mom, Clara, or one of my brothers always hovering nearby. But in those stolen moments, James painted pictures of a bigger world. He'd talk about the cities he'd seen, promising to take me to the Pacific Ocean one day. "Emma," he'd say, "you're meant for more than this small-town life." And I believed him. Hook, line, and sinker. 6 months later, we were engaged. James put a down payment on a little house in the next town over, where we'd start our life. He'd show me Polaroids of furniture he'd picked out, asking my opinion like it mattered. For the first time, I felt seen. The wedding was set for June 1965, right after my 18th birthday. I was so excited I could hardly sleep. This was it, my ticket out, my chance to breathe free. If you're liking this story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your city. I'm curious to know where my words are landing, but hold on, because things are about to take a dark turn. The night before the wedding, we had a small gathering at our house. Nothing fancy, just family, a few neighbours, and a spread of Mum's cooking. James couldn't make it. He was off borrowing a suit from his cousin in the next town, set to be back for the 10 a.m. church ceremony. The house was buzzing, my aunts fussing over my dress, my brothers hauling in extra chairs for the backyard reception. Amid the chaos, Dad sat on the porch in his rocking chair, puffing on his cigar, his eyes unreadable. Every time our gazes met, a weird chill ran through me. Something was off, but I couldn't pin it down. When the house finally quieted down, I slipped into the room I shared with Clara. She'd married a couple of years earlier, but came back for my big day. She was still in the kitchen, helping Mum clean up, so I was alone, folding the few clothes I'd take to my new life. Then the door creaked open. It was Dad. He shut it behind him and just stared at me, the silence heavy. "Tomorrow you're leaving," he said, his voice low and strange. "You'll be another man's wife." "Yes, Dad," I mumbled, confused by the conversation. He wasn't one for heart-to-hearts. Then he sat on the bed, too close, his hand landing on my shoulder. I froze. "Do you know what happens on a wedding night?" he asked, his eyes boring into mine. My face burned. Mum had given me the basics, and I'd overheard enough gossip by the river to piece the rest together. "Yes, Dad," I stammered. "No, you don't," he growled, his voice a rasp. But I'm gonna show you. What happened next is a blur I've spent decades trying to bury. His hand over my mouth, silencing my screams. The weight of him. The pain, physical and soul deep. The man who was supposed to protect me shattered me instead. When it was over, he stood, fixed his clothes and said, "Now you know, don't embarrass yourself tomorrow." Then he walked out. I lay there, numb, until Clara came in. I pulled the covers up, pretending to sleep. Tell someone. Who'd believe me? Dad was the town's golden boy, and if they did believe me, what then? Would James still want me? I stayed awake all night, staring into the dark, my body aching, my heart in pieces. Morning came, and I moved like a robot. I bathed, dressed, let them pin up my hair. In the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. Hollow eyes, a fake smile to keep everyone clueless. At the church, I floated down the aisle, Dad at my side, playing the proud father. James stood at the altar, beaming in his borrowed suit. We said our vows, swapped rings, smiled for the crowd. But I felt Dad's eyes on me, a reminder of the mark he'd left. That night, in our new home, James reached for me with such gentleness, but I froze. I couldn't explain. I just sobbed, leaving him confused, asking if he'd done something wrong. "Just nerves," I lied. "I need time." James, bless him, didn't push. We slept holding hands night after night. It took nearly a month before I could let him touch me, and even then I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting off the shadow of Dad's face. Our marriage started under that cloud. James was gone a lot, driving his truck, sometimes for weeks. I stayed home, trying to play the happy wife, forcing smiles when he returned, but something inside me had cracked for good. I thought that night was the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 months in, I noticed my period was late. At first, I blamed stress, my body reeling from everything. But deep down, I knew the truth was coming for me. 3 months late, and there was no dodging it anymore. I was pregnant. What should have been a moment of pure joy hit me like a freight train of panic. I started counting days, piecing together the timeline. James and I hadn't been intimate until nearly a month into our marriage. Before that, only that awful night with my father. The truth burned through me like wildfire through dry grass. The baby growing inside me wasn't my husband's, it was my father's. Back in 1965, there were no fancy DNA tests to sort out paternity. Even if there were, how could I explain this? Who'd believe me? How do you tell your husband the child he's celebrating isn't his? James thought we'd consummated our marriage, and to him this baby was ours, a symbol of our new life together. When I broke the news, his face lit up like a kid on Christmas. He scooped me up, spinning me around our tiny living room, already planning. "Gonna be a boy," he said, grinning ear to ear, strong like his dad, with his mum's kind heart. Every word was a knife twisting in my gut. Guilt gnawed at me, but fear was the real beast. If I spilled the truth, I'd lose everything. My marriage, my home, maybe even my life. In rural Montana back then, a man's honour could be a dangerous thing. Some folks still thought a betrayal like that justified blood. So I did what countless women before me have done when life backs you into a corner. I swallowed my tears and faked it. I smiled through neighbours' congratulations, nodded at old ladies' advice, and accepted baby blankets with a grin. On the outside, I was the glowing new wife. Inside, I was crumbling. As my belly grew, so did my dread. Alone at night while James was off driving his truck, I'd hug my stomach and sob, whispering to the baby, "It's not your fault, little one. It's not your fault." When my mum visited in my 6th month, she brought hand-sewn baby clothes and small-town gossip. She mentioned Dad was acting off, quieter, drinking heavier, vanishing for days. "He misses you, Emma," she said, all innocent. "He's always been so fond of you, even if he's not big on showing it." I nearly gagged, the mention of him worse than morning sickness. I changed the subject fast, asking about my brothers, anything to shove him out of my mind. Before she left, Mum grabbed my hands and looked me in the eye. "Your dad's so excited to meet his grandkid," she said. "He'd never admit it, but he's proud as can be." My blood turned to ice. "No, Mom," I snapped, sharper than I meant to. "I'd rather wait till the baby's older. Newborns are too fragile for the trip." It was a flimsy excuse, but it was all I had. The thought of my father near my child, his child, made my skin crawl. I'd run to the ends of the earth before letting that happen. Ava was born on a stormy March morning in 1966, after a grueling 20-hour labour. James was stuck on the road and couldn't make it. Our neighbour, Mrs. Carter, a seasoned midwife, helped me through it. When she placed that tiny blood-streaked bundle in my arms, something shifted. I'd braced myself to feel anger, maybe even revulsion, for the child tied to my father's sin. Instead, love hit me like a tidal wave, so big it barely fit inside me. That wrinkled little face, those tiny fists, she was mine, not his, just mine. "She's a strong one," Mrs. Carter said, wiping my brow. "What's her name?" "Ava," I said without a second thought. It was my grandma's name, the one person who'd ever shown me real warmth growing up. Ava meant life, and I prayed my daughter would have the strength to rise above the shadow of her origins, never knowing the truth. James got home 2 days later, road-weary but glowing when he saw Ava. He tiptoed over, eyes misty, and touched her tiny hand. "She's perfect, Emma," he whispered. "Just like you." I thanked every star in the sky that Ava looked like me, my eyes, my nose, nothing like my father. It was a small mercy in the middle of my private hell. Those first months with Ava were a blur of learning curves. James cut back on his trips, staying home to help. He was a natural dad, changing diapers without a grumble, rocking her through midnight cries, singing off-key lullabies with so much heart it hurt to watch. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking Ava was lucky. She'd never know her biological father, and that was a gift. She had James, a man who loved her like she hung the moon. Then, when Ava was 6 months old, the moment I'd been dreading hit. I opened the door one afternoon, and there was my father. Same cowboy hat, same cigar stub, but older, greyer. "Came to see my granddaughter," he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I froze, unable to let him in, unable to tell him to leave. Ava was napping in her crib in the living room. Her little cry broke the spell, giving me an excuse to turn away. "She's awake," I muttered, scooping her up and clutching her tight, like my arms could shield her from him. He'd already stepped inside, closing the door. "Let me see her," he said, moving closer. "No," I shot back, stepping away. The word came out fierce, unyielding, something I'd never dared with him before. His eyes narrowed, surprised. I'd never said no to him in my life. "What's wrong with you, Emma?" "I just want to see my granddaughter." "She's not your granddaughter," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "She's nothing to you." His face changed, like he'd been slapped. He knew I knew. His eyes went cold, harder than I'd ever seen. "Watch your words, girl," he hissed. "Some things are better left buried." "Get out," I said, my legs trembling but my resolve ironclad. "Get out and don't come back. Stay away from my daughter." He stared me down, weighing his options. Finally, he jammed his hat back on and headed for the door. "You owe me respect, Emma," he said, turning one last time. "Don't forget that." When the door shut, I collapsed on the floor, Ava still in my arms, and cried, tears of fear, rage, and a flicker of relief. I knew he wasn't done with me. Men like him don't take no for an answer, especially not from their daughters. That night, when James got home, he saw right through my forced calm. "What's wrong, Em?" he asked, worry creasing his face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I almost told him everything. The words were right there, begging to spill out, but fear clamped my mouth shut, fear of losing James, Ava, the fragile life we were building. "Just tired," I lied, my voice barely steady. That night I didn't sleep. Every creak had me jumping, picturing my father breaking in. For days I was a nervous wreck, never letting Ava out of my sight, even to hang laundry in the yard. James noticed, chalking it up to new mom exhaustion. "You need a break, Em," he'd say. "Let me take Ava when I'm home." Months rolled by, and Ava grew, crawling, toddling, babbling her first words. She was sunshine in a storm, oblivious to the weight I carried. But I knew the past wasn't done with me yet. It was lurking, waiting to strike. When Ava called James Daddy for the first time, my heart did a somersault, half joy, half agony. It was a sweet sound that stung, a reminder of the lie I was living, but also a relief, because James was the only father she'd ever know, God willing. By the time Ava turned 1 in 1967, a letter from my mum arrived, tucked among her usual chatter about Willow Creek and questions about Ava. One line stopped me cold. "Your dad's set on visiting next month. Says he's waited too long to meet his granddaughter. We're saving up for the bus ticket." Panic clawed at me. I couldn't let him near Ava, couldn't let him taint her life with his presence. How do you tell your husband, your mum, your whole world that you don't want your own father around? The answer hit me like a lightning bolt. We had to leave. Somewhere far, where he couldn't track us down. Convincing James was no small feat. He loved his trucking job, had roots in the area, and we'd just settled into our little house. But that night, when he got home, I pitched it like a daydream. "James, what if we moved to Denver? Big city, bigger opportunities, better pay, better schools for Ava when she's older." He blinked at me, caught off guard. "Denver? That's a haul, Em. We don't know a soul there." "That's the point," I pressed, leaning into his old promises. "You said you'd show me the world, right? Denver's just the start." For days I nudged, talking up jobs, schools, a fresh chapter, never mentioning my father or the fear choking me. Finally, James caved. "All right, let's give it a shot. If it flops, we can come back." I wrote Mom the next day, spinning a tale about James getting a can't-miss job offer in Denver, saying Dad's visit would have to wait. We sold what little we owned, scraped together our savings, and within a month we were on a bus to Denver, Ava dozing in my lap, unaware of the escape we were pulling off. James was all in, excited for the adventure. Me? I was torn between relief and the nagging fear that my father would find us. Denver was a shock to the system, loud, crowded, nothing like our quiet Montana town. We rented a cramped room in an East Side boarding house, sharing a bathroom and kitchen with 5 other families. James took a job as a mechanic's helper, earning less than before but staying close to home. I started baking pies, a trick I'd learned from a neighbour back home, selling them door to door. Soon, my pies were a hit in the neighbourhood, earning us just enough to get by and save a bit for a better place. For nearly 2 years, life settled into a rhythm. Ava grew into a bright, chatty toddler, racing down the boarding house halls, charming every kid she met. James got promoted to mechanic, boosting our income. I upgraded from door-to-door pie sales to a little stand at a nearby market. Things were looking up until the past crashed into me like a runaway truck. I was kneading dough at the market when a voice froze me solid. "Can't believe I found you, Emma." I looked up, and there he was, my father, older, more weathered, but with the same cold eyes that haunted my nightmares. "How?" I choked out. "How'd you find me?" He smirked, no warmth in it. "A father always finds his daughter no matter where she hides." Later, I learned he'd pieced it together. Vague hints in Mum's letters, gossip from folks with Denver connections. 2 years of patient, predatory searching, and now he stood there, real as day. "What do you want?" I asked, scanning for Ava. She was with a neighbour, but I still panicked. "To see my granddaughter," he said, casual, as if he were asking for a cup of coffee. "Or should I say my daughter?" My blood turned to ice. It was the first time he'd said it out loud, confirming the truth I'd tried to bury. "Get out," I hissed. "There's nothing for you here." He stepped closer, voice low and sharp. "Oh, there is. And if you don't let me see her, I'll tell James everything. How do you think he'll take it, raising my kid as his?" It was my worst fear, spoken aloud. I stood there, trapped between rage and terror. "I'm at the Johnson Inn by the church," he went on, like we were planning a picnic. "I'll be there a week. Bring Ava by Thursday, or I'm finding James at his shop." Then he walked away, leaving me shaking so hard I had to grip the counter to stay upright. The next few days were torture. Letting him near Ava was unthinkable, but if he told James, my world would collapse. Run again? Where to now? That night, as I wrestled with impossible choices, James came home early. He was pale, hands unsteady, and sat at our tiny kitchen table, staring at me with eyes I didn't recognise. "A man came to the shop today," he said, voice tight. "Said he was your father." My heart stopped. He hadn't waited for Thursday. He'd gone straight for the kill. "What did he want?" I asked, stalling, my mind racing for an escape. "He wanted to talk about Ava," James said, his gaze piercing. "Said she's not mine." The room spun. The secret I'd buried for years was out, raw and bleeding. James's face was a storm of confusion, anger and hurt. "What did he tell you?" I whispered, barely audible. He scrubbed a hand over his face, looking older than his 31 years. "Said you were already pregnant when we got married, by another man, that you've been lying to me." His fist hit the table, rattling a plate. "Is it true, Emma? Tell me it's not." I could have lied, could have called my father a lunatic, spun some story to save us. But looking at James, the man who'd been my rock, who loved Ava like she was his own, I couldn't keep up the charade. "It's true," I said, tears spilling over. "Ava's not your biological daughter. But you're the only father she knows, the only one she loves." His face crumpled, pain so raw it felt like I'd stabbed him. He stood, knocking over his chair. "How could you?" he yelled, forgetting Ava was asleep nearby. "How could you let me believe she was mine? Let me love her?" His voice broke, and I saw it. The love for Ava was real, unshakable even now. "Who's the father?" he asked after a long, heavy silence, his voice quieter but sharp. "Someone from town? Someone I know?" The question I dreaded most. How could I tell him the truth? That Ava's father was my father, that the night before our wedding had broken me? "It doesn't matter," I said, dodging. "It was one time before we married. A mistake that never happened again. Please, James, believe me." "Doesn't matter?" He laughed, bitter and hollow. "I've spent 3 years raising another man's kid, thinking she was mine. I deserve to know who." Just then, Ava's cries cut through the air, her little voice calling, "Mommy! Daddy!" from the next room. I moved to go to her, but James grabbed my arm, his eyes locked on mine. "Don't walk away from this, Emma," he said. "Who's her father?" Ava's cries grew louder, tugging at my heart, but I was trapped, the truth teetering on the edge of everything I'd built. When Ava's little voice called out, "Daddy!" James's face softened for a split second, the anger melting into a deep, aching sadness. "Go," he said, letting go of my arm. "Calm her down." But we're not done here. I rushed to our room, scooped Ava into my arms, and rocked her, whispering soft words while my tears soaked her curls. She drifted back to sleep, oblivious to the storm tearing our family apart. When I returned to the kitchen, James was gone. No note, no word on if he'd be back. I spent the night clutching Ava, jumping at every footstep outside, praying he'd return, praying for a chance to explain the unexplainable. He came back at dawn, eyes bloodshot, reeking of whiskey but calmer. He sat on the edge of our bed, staring at Ava as she slept, like he was searching her face for answers. "I need to know, Emma," he said, voice low and raw. "Who's her father?" "Why, James," I pleaded, desperation spilling over. What changes? You're her dad in every way that counts. She loves you. You love her. Why drag this ghost into our lives?" "Because I need to understand," he said, a new edge in his eyes. "Was it someone you loved? Or—" He paused, suspicion dawning. "Was it against your will?" The question hung like a thundercloud. No one had ever named what happened, not out loud. The dam inside me broke, and words tumbled out through sobs. "Yes," I whispered, clutching Ava tighter, like she could shield me from the truth. "It was against my will, the night before our wedding." James's face shifted, anger to shock, then a flicker of understanding, and finally a compassion I hadn't dared hope for. "Who?" he asked, voice a tense whisper. "Who did this to you, Em?" I couldn't meet his eyes. "My father," I said, barely audible. "It was my father." The silence that followed was a heavy, suffocating fog. When I finally looked up, James's face was a mix of horror, disgust, and a rage so fierce it scared me. "Your father," he repeated, like the words didn't fit together. "Your own father did this, then came here to see Ava." I nodded, words failing me. The whole story poured out. The night before our wedding, the fear that silenced me, the pregnancy, my father's visit, our escape to Denver, and now him tracking us down. James listened, fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. When I finished, he stood and paced to the window, staring out at the bustling Denver street. "Where is he?" he asked after a long pause. "Johnson Inn by the church," I said, my stomach twisting as I recalled my father's threat. "But James, don't do anything. He's dangerous. He could hurt you, hurt us." James turned, and for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me, Em?" he asked, voice breaking. "Why carry this alone? I would have understood. We could have faced it together." I was terrified, I admitted, tears flooding back. Scared you wouldn't believe me, scared you wouldn't want me, or think I was too broken, scared I'd lose the only happiness I'd ever had. He sat beside me, pulling me into a fierce, protective hug that said more than words ever could. "I love you, Emma," he said, voice cracking. "From that first day at the church picnic, nothing your father did changes that." He looked at Ava, sleeping peacefully between us. "And Ava? She's my daughter. Doesn't matter how she got here, she's mine." He tapped his chest, right over his heart. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. The secret's weight lifted, and even with the storm still raging, a spark of hope flickered. "What now?" I asked, voice shaky. "First, I make sure your father never comes near you or Ava again," James said, steel in his tone. "Then we start fresh, maybe somewhere new, where Ava can grow up without this shadow." "But he's dangerous, James," I said, fear creeping back. "I don't want you hurt because of us." "I won't get hurt," he promised, "and I won't do anything reckless, but he needs to know he's done with this family." James left soon after, saying he was going to confront my father. I stayed home trembling, picturing every worst-case scenario. My father attacking him, spinning lies to the police, or James losing control. The hours crawled by like years. Ava woke up, played, ate, her innocence a bright spot in the chaos. Looking at her, so pure and full of life, I marvelled at how something so beautiful could come from something so ugly. She was proof that light could break through even the darkest cracks. James came back late that afternoon, exhausted but calm, no signs of a fight or more drinking. He sat beside me, taking my hands. "It's done," he said. "He won't bother you again." "What did you do?" I asked, bracing myself. "Talked to him," he said. "Told him I know everything, that Ava's my daughter, legally, morally, in every way. Told him if he comes near you, I'll go to the police and spill it all. It might be hard to prove after years, but the scandal would ruin him in Willow Creek. That's what he's scared of, losing his precious reputation." "And he just agreed?" I asked, sceptical. James gave a tired smile. Not at first, denied it, then threatened me, even tried to bribe me. But when he saw I wasn't backing down, he folded, said he's leaving tomorrow and won't come looking again. I wanted to believe it, but I knew my father too well. I don't trust him, I said. He might be playing us, planning something. I don't trust him either, James admitted. That's why we're moving again, farther this time. I was thinking California. My cousin there can help with a job, a place to stay. California, I echoed, the idea both thrilling and terrifying, so far from everything I knew. You sure? It's far enough he won't find us, James said. Big enough to disappear in. A real fresh start, Em. The thought of leaving behind not just our meagre belongings, but the ghosts of my past felt like a lifeline, a chance to raise Ava without fear, to live our love untainted by that darkness. Let's do it, I said, nodding. Let's go to California. The next weeks were a whirlwind. We sold what little we had, scraped together every cent. James quit his job at the shop. I wrote a final letter to Mum, vague about our plans, asking her not to look for us. It hurt to sever that tie, but it was the price of safety. We left Denver on a bright August morning in 1967. Ava, now 3.5, was thrilled about the big bus adventure, too young to grasp why we were running. The journey was grueling. 3 days on the road, sleeping in cheap motels, eating greasy diner food. Ava turned every stop into a game, while James stayed focused, his eyes set on our future. I couldn't shake the fear. Every bus stop I scanned the crowd, half expecting my father's face. Every lingering stare from a stranger sent a chill down my spine, wondering if he'd sent someone to track us. We rolled into Los Angeles on a sticky afternoon, the city sprawling and chaotic, a world away from Montana's quiet fields. It was overwhelming, but it felt like a promise, a chance to finally outrun the shadows and build something new. Los Angeles hit us like a tidal wave, skyscrapers looming, beaches packed, cars and people moving like ants on a mission. James's cousin, Eddie, met us at the bus station, a grin on his face and keys to a cramped room in an East LA boarding house. It ain't much, he said, leading us to a space barely big enough for a double bed and a mattress on the floor for Ava, shared bathroom, shared kitchen, 3 other families crammed in the hall, but it was ours. It felt safe. It was a fresh page. James started at Eddie's garage the next day, hauling tools as a helper. I scoped out the neighbourhood, hoping to sell my pies, but the streets were alive with taco carts and tamale stands. My Montana apple pies weren't going to cut it here. I adapted, learning from a neighbour how to whip up cinnamon-dusted churros and fluffy cornbread that Angelinos couldn't resist. Soon I had a little stand at the local market, and to my shock, my baked goods flew off the table faster than my pies ever did. Ava, almost 4, tagged along, charming customers with her gap-toothed smile and wild stories she'd spin from thin air. People loved her almost as much as they loved my churros. Months slipped by, and we started to sink roots into this chaotic city. James got promoted at the garage, earning enough for us to move into a tiny apartment, no more shared bathrooms. Ava started preschool, shining with her quick wit and knack for making friends. My pastry stand grew, taking party orders that padded our savings. For the first time we had a sliver of stability, a cushion against the world. The shadow of my father began to fade. I stopped flinching at every corner, stopped waking up in a cold sweat, certain I'd heard his voice. Time and distance were building a fragile wall around us. James and I were mending too. The truth about Ava had left scars, but he kept his promise, never once treated her differently. If anything, he doubled down, determined to be the dad she deserved. Our intimacy, rocky from the start because of my trauma, started to heal. James was patient, never pushing, always waiting when a touch brought back that awful night. Slowly, I learned to separate his love from my father's betrayal. Some nights a memory would hit and I'd freeze, but James would just hold my hand, whispering, "I'm here, Em. Take your time. His love was a lighthouse, guiding me through the fog. When Ava turned 5 in 1969, I found out I was pregnant again. After years of trying with no luck, we'd almost given up. The clinic doctor said stress and trauma had likely taken a toll on my body, but now, in this calmer chapter, it was ready. The news sparked a joy we hadn't felt in ages. Ava was over the moon, chattering about her future sibling. James, though worried about money, couldn't stop grinning. For me, it felt like the universe was handing me a do-over, a planned baby, born from love, not pain. Those months were a golden haze. James worked hard, I kept my stand going despite my growing belly, and Ava thrived at school, already planning how she'd boss around the new baby. It was like we'd finally outrun the darkness until a letter arrived in my 7th month, shattering our peace. It was from my mum, the first in 2 years. I'd no idea how she found us. Maybe Eddie let something slip, not knowing the stakes. Her shaky handwriting spilled across the page. My dearest Emma, I hope you're well. I've been searching for you. Your father passed 2 months ago, a stroke in the fields. It was quick, no suffering. Before he died, he confessed what he did to you before your wedding. About Ava. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for failing you. I can't forgive myself. I need to see you, meet my granddaughter, ask for your forgiveness in person. I'm with your brother David now. With love and regret, Mum. I read it over and over, tears blurring the ink. My father was gone. The monster was dead. And my mum knew the truth, carrying its weight like I had. When James got home, I handed him the letter. He read it quietly, then pulled me into a long hug. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I didn't know. Part of me wanted to burn the letter, close that chapter forever. But another part, the daughter who remembered Mum's quiet kindness despite her submission, wanted to give her a chance, to let Ava and our new baby know their grandma. "I need time," I said, my voice small. That night I lay awake, the baby kicking as if sensing my turmoil. Ava slept soundly next door, unaware of the storm her mother was navigating. I wondered about Mom. Had she suspected anything? Had she seen the shift in me after that night, or in my father's smug silence? His deathbed confession, had it shattered her, or was it just the final crack in a life of betrayals? I thought of Ava, who'd never known a grandma, with James's mom gone before we met. Did I have the right to keep her from that bond, especially now that my father was no threat? And the baby in my belly, wouldn't they deserve a world of healing, not just secrets swept under the rug? After days of wrestling, with James by my side, I made my choice. I wrote Mom back, inviting her to visit after the baby was born. I didn't promise forgiveness. I wasn't sure I could give it. But I offered an open door, a chance to rebuild. Ethan James was born on a crisp December morning in 1969, a sturdy boy with his father's eyes. Ava, nearly 6, was smitten, stepping into big sister mode like she was born for it. James, already a devoted dad to Ava, was a puddle of love for Ethan, never treating the kids differently despite their origins. Mum arrived 2 weeks later, frail and aged, her eyes heavy with guilt. Our reunion was a tangle of tears and halting words, too raw to untangle fully. Ava broke the tension, marching up to this stranger grandma and asking, "Can you tell stories? Daddy's stories are okay, but he skips the good parts." Mum's face lit up, a real smile breaking through years of sorrow. "Oh, I've got stories, sweetheart, tales of Montana critters and spooky ghosts." Ava's eyes sparkled. "Ghosts? Tell one now." And just like that, over stories, Mum started weaving her way back into our lives. It wasn't smooth or quick. The wounds were deep, the silences long. We never spoke of my father's actions directly. It loomed between us, a ghost we didn't name. Maybe that was for the best. Some truths are too heavy for words, even between those who share the pain. Mum moved to a small room nearby, and visit by visit, we rebuilt something like a mother-daughter bond. Years rolled on. Ava grew into a sharp, driven teenager, set on college and making her mark. Ethan took after James, tinkering with cars from the time he could hold a wrench, helping out when James opened his own garage after years of saving. Our life wasn't perfect. Money was tight, old scars ached sometimes, but it was ours. We'd built it from the ashes of my past, brick by brick, with love and grit. Looking back, I see it clear. The darkest nights can lead to dawn if you keep walking. So, what's your story? What shadows have you outrun to find your light? We had our share of struggles, money was tight, health scares popped up, and we bickered like any family. But we had something I never thought I'd find: peace. The kind that comes from living without fear, without secrets clawing at your throat, without the past lurking like a storm cloud ready to burst. Ava never knew the truth about her origins. James and I decided together to keep it buried. What good would it do to tell her? It'd only weigh her down with a pain that wasn't hers to carry. James was her dad in every way that mattered. Love, late-night stories, piggyback rides. Biology was just a dirty detail we locked away. Mom, who'd once thought Ava deserved to know, came around to our side. "She's a happy kid," she said one day, watching Ava chase Ethan around the tiny yard of our new ground-floor apartment. "Your father's done enough damage. No need to let him hurt her from the grave." So we built a life, not flashy, but ours. A life that bloomed from the wreckage of my past, maybe because of all we'd endured. Time flowed like a river, sometimes smooth, sometimes choppy, but always moving forward. Ava grew into a radiant, determined woman. In 1987, with us pinching every penny, she started nursing school, the first in our family to set foot in a university. Our pride could have burst the walls. Ethan, our youngest, was James's shadow, a born mechanic. By 18, he was running the garage with James, which had grown to employ 3 others. We'd traded our cramped apartment for a modest house in East LA, nothing fancy but cosy. My pastry stand had turned into Emma's Montana pies, a neighbourhood gem slinging apple pies and churros that kept folks coming back. Mum, now frail with heart trouble, lived with us, her presence a quiet comfort. It was a good life. Every day I thanked God for the strength to rebuild from ashes. The secret about Ava stayed buried, known only to me, James, and Mom. We carried it so Ava wouldn't have to. Or so we thought. On a warm September night in 1991, our carefully built world started to crack. Ava, 25 and fresh out of nursing school, was working at a hospital and engaged to Lucas, a kind doctor from a working-class family like ours. Their wedding was set for December. We were gathered for Sunday dinner, a tradition we held sacred. James and Ethan debated football, Mum dozed in her armchair, and I fiddled with Ava's wedding dress to save a few bucks. Ava was quiet, twisting her engagement ring, her eyes far away, nothing like her usual spark. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked, catching the unease in her face. She looked up, and her eyes hit me like a punch, fear, confusion, and a steely resolve that mirrored my own from years ago, facing my demons. "I need to talk," she said, voice steady despite her trembling hands. "To all of you." The room went still. Mum snapped awake sitting up. James muted the TV. Ethan set down his car magazine. Ava took a deep breath, like she was steeling herself for a leap. "I'm pregnant," she said. A stunned silence, then a burst of joy. "A baby!" I said, trying to mask the knot in my gut. "You and Lucas are just jumping the gun a bit, but that's fine. The wedding's soon." Ava's face didn't budge. "That's not it, Mom," she said, voice cracking. "The baby's not Lucas's." The air vanished from the room. James stiffened. Ethan shifted awkwardly, and Mum clutched her chest, her heart trouble flaring in her eyes. "What do you mean, not Lucas's?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice even. Ava's tears fell silently, her face a mirror of mine decades ago. "It's horrible, Mum. Impossible." My spine prickled, a sick familiarity creeping in. I braced myself, hand over my mouth. "It's my father," she said, the words ripping out of her. "My own father." The world tilted. James shot up, fists clenched, face ghost white. "What? That's impossible, Ava. What are you saying?" "Not you, Dad," she said, calm amid the chaos. "My biological father." Time froze. My heart plummeted. How did she know? Who told her? And how could my father, dead for over 20 years, be the father of her child? "Sis, what?" Ethan said, lost. "Dad's right here. James—" Ava shook her head, wiping tears. "Not for me. I found out months ago James isn't my biological father." I looked at Mum, who seemed ready to collapse. Had she broken our pact? "How?" I choked out. "How'd you find out, Ava?" "I found letters," she said. "Grandma's letters to you, under your bed. I was looking for your cornbread recipe. I swear I wasn't snooping, but I saw my name and read them." Mum's letters, vague but dangerous, had hinted at Ava's origins over the years. We'd feared they could be pieced together by someone determined enough. "So I investigated," Ava went on. "I went to Willow Creek, said it was a work trip, talked to people who knew our family, pieced it together." James tried to speak, but Ava raised a hand. "Then I found him," she said, voice fading. "My biological father." "Impossible," I whispered, ice in my veins. "He's been dead for over 20 years." Ava's eyes widened, confused. "Dead? No, Mum. He's alive in San Diego. I met him." The room spun again. James steadied me as I swayed. "Who?" I asked, voice barely there. "Who'd you find?" "Henry Johnson," she said. "My grandfather, my father." I turned to Mum, who was sobbing into her hands. The truth hit like a sledgehammer. "Mum," I said, trembling, "is it true? Is he alive?" She looked up, eyes red, hands shaking. "I'm so sorry, Emma," she whispered. "I thought you'd be safer believing he was gone. He disappeared after you left. I didn't know where he went." The betrayal burned. All these years I'd thought the monster was dead, only for him to resurface, reaching Ava. "What did he do to you?" I asked Ava, dreading the answer. "Did he hurt you?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "Not at first," she said softly. "He said he was a distant cousin, someone who knew me as a baby. He was kind, told family stories, gave me gifts, said he knew about my real father but needed time to explain." My heart sank. The same charm, the same lies. He'd found her, and history was repeating itself. What happened next? How did we let the past creep back to steal her light? My stomach churned as Ava spoke. I knew that game too well. The slow drip of kindness, the calculated charm, the trap set with trust. "We met a few times," Ava continued, her voice barely above a whisper. He'd share stories, little details, but always dodged who my real father was. Then one night, after drinks— She stopped, unable to go on. She didn't need to. I knew the rest. The same nightmare I'd lived through, now circling back to my daughter like a curse that wouldn't quit. "Afterward," Ava said, voice breaking, "he told me he was my biological father, said he'd been with you before your wedding." A twisted lie, painting his crime as an affair, not the assault it was. He'd violated her, then poisoned her with half-truths, and now she carried his child, just as I'd carried her. James, who'd been silent, his face a mask of growing horror, finally spoke, his voice low and sharp as a blade. "Where is he now?" "A hotel in Beverly Hills," Ava said, tears streaming. "He followed me to LA, says he wants to be part of the baby's life." "No," James growled, fists white-knuckled. "Not happening. Never." Ava's sobs shook her. "I don't know what to do. Lucas doesn't know. How do I tell him the baby's from my own—" She couldn't finish. Ethan, stunned but aching for his sister, wrapped her in an awkward hug. "Ava," I said, forcing calm over the storm inside me. "Look at me." Her red-rimmed eyes met mine. "There's something you need to know about your birth." "About your biological father?" For the first time, I told her everything. The rape the night before my wedding, the pregnancy, choosing to raise her as James's daughter, my father's pursuit, our escapes to Denver and LA, the lie about his death. Tears soaked my face, and the room wept with me. When I finished, a heavy silence fell. Ava's expression was unreadable, shock, understanding, maybe a flicker of relief at knowing her story. "So she started, voice faltering. "You're my daughter," I said firmly, "and James's daughter, raised with all the love in his heart. Your origins don't define you, Ava, never have." She touched her flat belly. "And this baby?" The question hung like a storm cloud. It was her crossroad, one I'd never faced. In 1960s Montana, abortion wasn't an option. My beliefs and lack of access saw to that. But this was 1991 LA. Ava had choices. "That's yours to decide," I said. "But whatever you choose, we're with you." James nodded, his love for Ava stronger than his rage. "First," he said, voice steadier, "we deal with him, with Henry." "He's dangerous," I warned. "You don't know what he's capable of." "I do now," Ava said softly, her pain cutting me deep. My daughter, who I'd shielded all her life, had been touched by the same evil. "He won't get near you again," James said, iron in his tone. "Not you, not the baby, if you keep it." "How?" I asked, fear clawing at me. "He always finds a way." "Not this time," James said. "We're not that scared young couple anymore. We've got a life, resources, people to help." He grabbed the phone, dialing. "I'm calling Mark," he said, naming a lawyer friend who helped with the garage. "We're getting a restraining order, then going to the police." "Police?" I echoed, terrified. "What proof do we have after so long?" "Ava's testimony," James said. "And if he did this to you, to her, there are likely others." The thought of airing our pain in court was daunting, but Ava's despair left no choice. The cycle had to end. That night was a blur of tears, plans, and resolve. Ethan offered to sleep on the couch, a sweet, if naive, guard duty. Mum, crushed by her failed lie, took a sedative and slept. Ava stayed over, too shaken to go home. "And Lucas?" she asked. "How do I tell him?" "With the truth," I said. "If he loves you, he'll stand by you, like James did for me." "And if he doesn't?" she asked, fear in her eyes. "Then he's not who we thought," James said, "and you deserve better." The next morning Mark arrived, listening to our story with calm professionalism. "A restraining order's straightforward with your testimonies," he said. "A criminal case is tougher, but if there are other victims, it's doable." The plan was set. Ava would arrange a meeting with my father at his hotel, with James, Mark, and 2 off-duty cops, Mark's friends, nearby. They'd serve the restraining order, confront him with the truth, and start the legal process. "It's risky," Mark warned. "Men like him can turn violent when cornered." "That's why the cops are there," James said. Ava, nervous but resolute, said, "I need to face him. He needs to know I'm not his pawn anymore." I hated the plan but agreed. Part of me wanted to run again, but another part craved justice, an end to the nightmare. Before we left, Ava pulled me to the backyard where my jasmine bush scented the air. "Mum," she said, gripping my hands, "I'm keeping the baby. I know it sounds crazy, but I remembered how you loved me despite everything. I can do that too." I hugged her, tears falling. Her choice mirrored mine, born of love stronger than pain. "And Lucas?" I asked. A small smile broke through her tears. "I told him last night. He cried, raged about him. But then he said real love is for the hard times, not just the good. He'll love this baby because it's mine." My heart swelled. Ava had found her James, a man whose love could weather any storm. At the Beverly Hills Hotel, a faded relic with peeling paint and worn carpets, my father stepped off the elevator. The towering figure of my nightmares was now a frail old man, leaning on a cane, white hair thin, but those cold, calculating eyes unchanged. He froze when he saw us all. Ava, James, me, Mark, and the cops in the shadows. "Emma," he rasped, my name like gravel. "Been a while." James tensed, but I touched his arm, urging calm. "Henry," I said, refusing to call him father. "Seems you clawed your way back from the dead." He smirked, yellowed teeth flashing. "Your mum always had a creative streak. Convenient, you thinking I was gone, huh?" Ava stepped forward. "What wasn't convenient was you lying about who you were then." Her voice wavered but held. "Then doing what you did." His gaze softened, sickeningly affectionate. "My granddaughter, or daughter, you're your mother's spitting image. Couldn't resist when I found you in San Diego." "Found her?" I snapped. "Or hunted her?" He shrugged. "Fate, call it. And now another little one on the way." His casualness about his crimes stole my breath, as if they were nothing. "No family reunion," James said, voice like steel. "We're here to set things straight." Mark stepped up, flanked by the cops. "Mr. Henry Johnson, I'm Mark Thompson, the family's lawyer. This restraining order bars you from contacting Ava Hernandez or her family." He held out the paper, ignored by my father. "Also," Mark continued, "a criminal complaint has been filed for rape and sexual abuse. The police need your statement." Fear flickered in my father's eyes, his mask slipping, revealing a cornered old man. Then he rallied, sneering. "Rape? Abuse? Ava came to me willingly. She's an adult." "Under lies," Ava shot back. "You posed as my grandfather, got me drunk, then told me the truth. That's not consent." "And it wasn't just her," I added. "You did it to me before my wedding, and likely others." He laughed a hollow sound. "Prove it. Something from 30 years ago? Be serious, Emma." "Maybe not alone," Mark said, "but with Ava's testimony and others we're finding, it's a strong case." The cops stepped closer, badges flashing. "Mr. Johnson," one said, "come with us." Panic widened his eyes, but with no escape he turned vicious. "Ungrateful!" he spat at me. "I gave you a roof, food, and this is how you repay me? Lies to ruin me?" I didn't answer. Instead, I looked him in the eye and smiled, a calm, fearless smile. "It's over, Henry. Your time's up." He was led away, cursing, threatening lawsuits and powerful friends, but his desperation betrayed him. He knew he was done. In the car, Ava asked, "Is it really over?" "Not quite," Mark said. "There'll be statements, maybe a trial, but he can't hurt you now." We drove home in silence, minds racing. Ethan and Mom, waiting anxiously, exhaled when we shared the news. That night, Ava called Lucas to tell him everything. He arrived, pale but steady, listening as Ava and I laid out the full story, from my assault to hers. When we finished, he was quiet, then looked at Ava with awe. "I'm so sorry," he said, voice thick. "I can't imagine what you've been through." Ava braced herself. "If you want to call off the wedding or don't want this baby, I understand." Lucas stopped her, a finger to her lips. "I love you, Ava, your strength, your heart. This isn't your fault or the baby's. I want to be the father this child deserves, like James was for you." James teared up, hugging Lucas like a son. The months ahead were grueling. My father was charged, not just for Ava, but for 2 other women who came forward after the case hit local news. His age and a heart condition let him stay free with an ankle monitor, barred from leaving LA or approaching us. Ava and Lucas postponed their wedding until after the baby's birth, wanting her part of it. Ava's pregnancy brought a strange peace, as if exposing our secrets had cleared space for joy. Lucas was a rock at every doctor's visit, reading parenting books, building a crib. When they learned it was a girl, he suggested Clara, because she'll bring light to our lives. Mum found peace too, her lie about my father's death forgiven without words. Clara was born on a bright May morning in 1992, a tough delivery like Ava's. When Ava held her, I saw the same overwhelming love I'd felt for her, a love bigger than the pain of her origins. Lucas beside her radiated devotion. James, holding my hand, whispered, "It's a cycle closing, isn't it? Ava found her James like you found me." I nodded, tears falling. A wound was healing, a new generation free of our secrets. The trial started 3 months later, brutal and draining. Reliving our traumas under scrutiny was torture, but we stood together. Me, Ava, James, Ethan, Lucas, Mom, even the other victims. In January 1993, my father got 15 years, a life sentence at 75. There was no celebration, just a collective exhale, like we'd been holding our breath for decades. "Is this the end?" Ava asked, cradling Clara outside the courthouse. "It's a beginning," I said, touching my granddaughter's face. "For all of us." Ava and Lucas married 2 months later, Clara toddling down the aisle with Ethan as the world's tiniest flower girl. The ceremony was simple, brimming with joy and hope. At the reception, I watched my family, James, greying but kind-eyed, Ethan, now a man with his girlfriend, Ava and Lucas, glowing, Clara giggling in Mum's lap, a living testament to love's victory over darkness. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Our scars remained, but we'd fought for this honest, hard-won happiness. Years passed. Ava and Lucas had 2 more kids, Noah and Lily, who adored their big sister Clara. We shared Clara's story age-appropriately, always stressing the love that defined her. James retired, passing the garage to Ethan, who grew it bigger. I closed Emma's Montana pies at 70, but still bake for family, keeping my Montana roots alive. Mum passed at 92, surrounded by great-grandkids, forgiven fully. My father died in prison in 1998, alone. I felt no joy, just quiet relief, like closing a book that no longer held power. Now, at 78, sitting at this pie stand my grandkids set up for my stories, I look back on a path of thorns and unexpected flowers. From a terrified girl to a woman who found love, from a desperate mother to one who protected her daughter, I see it clear. The darkest nights birth the brightest dawns. Clara, now 33, is a paediatrician, married with a son, her compassion shaped by her story, not defined by it. My father's evil, against his will, sparked goodness. That's how we win, not just surviving, but turning pain into purpose, leaving the world better. If my story touched you, thank you for listening. It's not easy to share or hear, but telling our truths builds bridges, reminding us we're not alone. There's light after darkness. Subscribe to Grandparents' Tales, where we share real stories weekly. Drop a like, comment with your city. I'd love to know where my voice reaches. Your past shapes you, but it doesn't.